Okay, hello everyone and welcome to the second Google Hangout. Pardon me if I'm flipping back and forth between pages. I want to see if anybody's writing any questions. But I'll answer some questions that I've already received on the discussion board. Writing any questions. But I'll answer some questions that I've already received on the... Okay, and so several people have asked specific questions about what would be helpful as far as exercise after certain injuries or conditions. These are questions that I don't feel totally comfortable with answering without knowing more or meeting a person in person. Many of these questions you should probably ask your doctor or a physical therapist. But in general, weight-bearing exercises such as weightlifting or other resistance exercises, running, walking are good for people who are trying to prevent osteoporosis. The opposite is true as far as cardio exercises for those with arthritis. So low weight-bearing cardio exercises are better for those individuals, things like swimming or biking, while resistance exercises would still be beneficial. Core strengthening refers to building the muscles of your torso, so basically everything other than your arms and your legs. So these include the muscles around your stomach, your back, your pelvic wall, your buttocks, like everything except for your arms and legs. The core helps keep your body stable and is involved with the ability to control the power produced at your limbs. Having a strong core will improve your overall fitness and limit injuries, so working out these muscles is really important. Examples of core exercises are things like push-ups, sit-ups, planks, leg presses, and any variations on those. If you go to the gym, you can look at the pictures that are on the sides of the machines, and those generally show which muscles are targeted, so you can see which ones are going to be targeting a lot of those core muscles if that's something that you really want to focus on. So I had a question about how you can lose belly fat. And so there is actually no way to target fat loss in any area of the body. So you can build muscle tone in a specific part of your body, so you can work on a specific set of muscles, but the way that you lose fat is just in the reverse order that you gained it. And so if you're following a healthy diet, if you're exercising, if you're losing weight, you'll eventually lose that belly fat. It'll just happen in the order in which you gained it, so there's no way to lose that faster with any specific diet or anything like that. Similarly, I had another question about the best diet for weight loss. And this is also another really hard question to answer. There is a lot of variability among individuals and how they respond to specific diets, exercise, things like that based on genetics, you know, and other lifestyle factors. So it's really hard to give an overarching answer to that question. What I would say is just try to eat a balanced diet based on diet recommendations with lots and lots of fruits and vegetables, so that you'll be getting very nutrient dense foods. So foods that will be high in fiber and nutrients, but low in calories and fat. As well as whole grains, so again, higher in fiber, lean meats or vegetable sources of protein, as well as low-fat dairy. So focusing on those more nutrient-dense foods, as well as getting exercise, is probably the best way to lose weight. In nutrition research, we are moving towards a calorie is not simply a calorie. So, you know, there are some better ways to go about this than others, but what that's basically getting at is things like simple carbohydrates aren't as filling as complex carbohydrates. You may end up eating more of them, and then different people's bodies respond differently to different nutrients. And you know, and I just want to make the point that there is evidence that shows that weight cycling, so losing and then regaining that weight, is actually less healthy, and it's harder on your body than simply carrying a little bit of excess weight. And so, you know, try to choose a diet that you stick to and really make sustainable changes. That'll be the healthiest options for you. Another part of this question was about minimum amounts of macronutrients that are needed. And so just in general, it's difficult to meet all of your nutrient needs on less than 1,200 calories. And that's if you're choosing all nutrient dense, very, very healthy foods. So I definitely eat at least that much. There are RDAs that are set for each macronutrient. You can find them in the week 2 materials. There is a minimum set for carbohydrates in particular. It's at 130 grams. This is for proper brain function. Your brain does work off of glucose. For fat, it's based on percentage of calories, as it also is for protein. But then we also look at protein as in terms of body weight. And so for protein, it's generally recommended that you have 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. You eat 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of your own body weight, unless you're an athlete, in which case you could bump that up to 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. Just so you guys know, excess protein will be turned into fat, just like any other calories. It does not go to building more muscle. So, you know, if you're really working it hard and you want to build up your muscles, you know, if you do 2 grams per kilogram, it's not going to make that happen any faster. So then I had a question about the body composition and aging video from Jared Dickerson, in which he said that increased fat mass actually helps to preserve aging. And then also had a question in there about how why would you, because he said it's not a good idea to focus on fat loss in later age unless you're obese. And this person was just wondering why that's the case. So everything that I've read and learned just says that fat mass is protective as far as falls. You know, it's more of a cushion for when you're older. And it's also creates these energy reserves for older people who get sick. And again, we're talking about just overweight, not obese. The more health damaging issue with aging is actually loss of muscle, which is called sarcopenia. And maintaining your muscle mass has been found to be protective in that population. So it's really important. So BMI itself is a bit controversial because it's based on some old insurance tables. They're called the MetLife tables that are on life expectancy. And these are not so clear when it comes to overweight individuals. So talking about about this overweight status, you know, it's a little bit of a gray area because of the way that the BMI cutoffs are set to whether being overweight is actually damaging to your health or is, at least your life expectancy, at least for people who are older. So that's kind of why that overweight category is a little bit gray. BMI is also a screener. It's not diagnostic. We learn this over and over again. If any of you decide to go into dietetics, you'll hear this in every single one of your classes. So just having a high BMI doesn't necessarily mean that a person is unhealthy. It's generally a proxy for unhealthy lifestyle factors. So eating a poor diet or not getting enough exercise, but that's not always the case. So, you know, so BMI is a little bit iffy anyway, but then just talking about just straight up focusing on fat loss, again, you know, for the overweight category, that is questionable. So that's basically why he was saying that, you know, that little bit of extra weight may actually be protective, and there isn't any hard and fast rule that just being overweight, especially if you have good muscle mass, is damaging to your health. And so again, just focusing on eating healthy and remaining as physically active as possible to maintain good muscle mass and to improve balance is a really good message for older individuals instead of encouraging them to keep an eye on the scale. So again, just going along with weight, I had another question about marasmus. So marasmus usually, well, it basically refers to, or it occurs mostly in young children in developing countries, which is why we included children in the definition of what is marasmus. Marasmus and kwashiorkor are both specific types of protein energy malnutrition. So usually in a hospital setting, like if a person has cancer or has other forms of protein energy malnutrition, or protein energy malnutrition due to other causes, we usually just refer to it as that. So PEM versus you know, the marasmus or kwashiorkor, which are subcategories. And so, you know, PEM does occur in adults. It's just we use different words to describe it, generally speaking. Okay, so then I had a question about child eating habits. And this is actually a topic I end up talking a lot about at work at WIC. And I think it's really interesting. But so children are much more innately attuned to their bodies and cues for hunger and fullness. And this is actually something that we mention to every mom that comes in, even with just a newborn baby. You know, we encourage them to look for signs that the baby is hungry and that they're full, so that they're not overeating them or overfeeding them, you know, even just from the start. And, you know, as kids even get a little bit older, there's been work done where if you look, you know, over a 2 to 3 day span, children will eat basically according to diet recommendations if you let them choose how much that they eat at a time. They also go through growth spurts, so you may end up having times where they're going to eat a ton of food, and then there are times when they barely eat at all, and parents often get really frustrated when that happens, and they get really scared, you know, that their kid isn't eating enough. And so they may do several things that actually work against the child later in life and are predictive of rates of obesity and overweight. And so what we tell parents is to follow what's called the division of responsibility. And so that's that as a parent, it's your job to choose what a child is going to eat, so to offer them healthy options, when they are going to eat, so loosely planning meals and snacks, and then only offering water in between. So this allows a child to get hungry in between meals. And where they're going to eat. So you decide whether they're eating in front of the TV, you know, which encourages overeating, or whether they're eating at the table as a family. And then it's the child's responsibilities to choose how much they're going to eat and whether or not they're going to eat. And that's the part that's really scary for parents. And so, you know, a lot of us grew up with the Clean Plate Club, you know, with our parents encouraging us, you know, just one more bite, things like that. But that can actually disrupt those hunger and fullness cues that are natural to kids. Most of us as adults, you know, we're not even quite sure what that is anymore. And I know I overeat on a regular basis, and I really have to think about it. To not do so, because I'm so out of touch with those hunger and fullness cues and, you know, what it really means to be hungry and full. And we just want to help kids retain those for as long as it's humanly possible. And so what the question was actually about, although I think that was the first part of the answer is very interesting, at least to me, but was about eating disorders. And if you have a parent with an eating disorder, if that contributes to a child possibly developing one as well. And that's a big factor in feeding children, is role modeling. Kids often will look at their parents as well as their peers and their siblings to what is good food and what isn't. And they usually go, you know, I don't want to say to the lowest common denominator, but to the person who's like the most picky or the one who's refusing items. And so, you know, if mom always eats everything, they may not be looking at you so much, but they may be looking at dad if, you know, sometimes he won't eat squash, or if he thinks that, I don't know, baked potatoes are gross, something like that. And so modeling is incredibly important. And the way that we talk to children is also incredibly important, and the way that we talk around children. And so if a mom has an eating disorder and they're very, very conscious of their own calories, and they're and controlling their diets, and they're talking a lot about being fat or being overweight or just weight in general, then that child may be picking that up, and they could have those problems in the future as well. So that was definitely a good thing that one of your classmates had picked up on. It's a very important factor. And And then and they had also asked about keratin. And so a person that's having, or who eats a healthy diet that includes plenty of proteins, plenty of fats, plenty of calories in general, their bodies are going to produce the keratin that's good for your nails. You know, there may be special circumstances when somebody who is eating a healthy diet would need keratin, you know, if they had some other issue in their body. But for the most part, you know, keratin isn't a necessary supplement for most people to take. Okay, so then somebody else brought up the issue of ethics. I believe this one was in regards to a study that was listed or that we provided that talked about having people gain some weight. And so I think this is also a very interesting issue, especially if you're into research. But every research study that's done in the US has to go through a process of being reviewed by the Institutional Review Board. And so most colleges have them, some other organizations have them. And so you have to submit all of your materials, like everything that will go into doing the study. So like if you have, I don't know, like any surveys, or if you have procedures for doing a specific study. So for like in that case, like how you're going to have them gain the weight, what you're going to do afterwards, like step by step, exactly what you're going to do, as well as your consent forms. And they have to be reviewed by the Institutional Review Board. And they may come back and make you change things. And so this is all in an effort to make sure that people aren't being abused, especially populations that are at risk. So like children is a big one. I believe elderly, people with mental disabilities, people, you know, just in general that may have issues with fully understanding what they're agreeing to, so that they don't get taken advantage of. And so this is very, very serious. This is a very big thing, you know, within the academic world. And so while that may sound a little bit odd, why would you have people gain weight? You know, those researchers had to go through a very rigorous test to get that study approved. And so you can feel pretty good that those people were treated correctly. And there is also institutional review boards around animal testing as well. There's a lot of rules on how to do animal testing in a safe and humane way. Okay, so then there was another question that had to do with choosing to make healthy eating making healthy eating choices. And you know, and it had a lot to do with price. And if price isn't an issue, then why would you choose an unhealthy diet? And you know, I think this is a very, very interesting concept as well, because there's so many other factors that go into why people eat, right? So besides price, so people choose foods because they taste good, because they're emotional eaters and they've learned that it, you know, makes them feel better. They eat based off of, you know, cultural situation, you know, like they eat cultural foods, just whatever they've commonly had. People eat because they're depressed. They eat because they either don't believe or they're in denial that what you eat or your weight is related to your health, or that they have any control over their health. So there's a lot of different reasons why people eat something or they don't eat something that have much, much more to do than just price. And you know, it really is, to a large degree, we have a very emotional, there's a lot of social ties around food. So it's really complex why someone would choose or not choose to eat healthy. And I'm sure we can all look at our own lives and think about that. You know, I know for myself, like, I don't always eat the best. And, you know, I have mac and cheese at barbecues. I have, you know, cake at birthdays. And, you know, and then sometimes I just eat something because I'm having a bad day. And, you know, it happens with a lot of people. And I think it's really important to keep up a sense of empathy and not to judge people right away on what they're eating. And, you know, if you do become a nutrition professional, it's really important to learn how to dig deep and ask the right questions and find why people really are doing what they're doing to help them come up with solutions. And So, and I also had in there as well that most of us live pretty sedentary lifestyles, especially if we work in office settings. So while somebody could be eating a decently healthy diet, you know, by not getting any physical activity, that may also be contributing to an overweight status. Our metabolism slow with age, and making changes, especially later in life, is difficult. So, you know, and this is both in general and because the US is not set up to encourage healthy lifestyles. Instead, it's very much so set up to encourage the opposite, unfortunately. And this is partly what we were trying to get at with the discussion board question this week about where do you find food in unusual places. And so, you know, having those foods in those places that you wouldn't necessarily think of provides both temptation as well as a sense of normalcy and an opportunity to eat all the time. And obviously those little snacks and things in between, they can all add up. Eating an extra 300 calories a day for a week will lead to 1 pound of weight gain, generally speaking. And so it doesn't take that much, you know, to contribute to somebody gaining weight over time. And so again, just obesity, overweight, eating habits, all those things are super complex. So please just keep that in mind when you're dealing with clients in the future if you go into this career. Okay, so then I had a couple of people asking questions about just sleep in general and, you know, how to get really good sleep. And so with sleep, it's always a good idea to follow a schedule. So even on weekends, trying to wake up at the same time, getting plenty of physical activity really helps, as well as making sure there are a few lights or sounds that may wake you up in your room. This includes things like your phones, you know, anything with a little red dot on it or whatever. You know, the screen of your phone is super bright compared to a dark bedroom. And so that could possibly wake you up. So just creating a space that is very calm, very dark, very quiet can be helpful to people. Although I guess with the quiet issue, some people like quiet background music, or sometimes I like to listen to the radio when I go to bed. It just helps to have a little bit of background noise. So basically just whatever works for you. And you may want to pay attention to patterns for you. So do you wake up more if you eat late at night? If you have an alcoholic beverage or two? If you're exercising close to bedtime or not at all? Does meditation help? You know, just having those, taking those few slow in and out breaths, does that help relax you? You know, it's really kind of just an experimental process. You know, what works best for you, what helps you, because everybody's different. And then I also wanted to point out that there is a National Sleep Foundation. And so the National Sleep Foundation website is sleepfoundation.org. And they have a lot of tips on ways to improve your sleep. Okay, so I thought this question was actually really interesting. It was somebody was asking if melatonin actually works for jet lag. And I tend to be kind of, I don't want to say against, but I'm skeptical of most supplements and their effectiveness. And so I went into researching this one and was kind of anticipating having it have no effect. But I actually found the exact opposite. And so I found a Cochrane review, and Cochrane reviews are known to be very high level, very trustworthy reviews of other journal articles. And so I found a Cochrane review of 10 studies saying that it was effective if timed correctly in between 0.5 to 5 milligram dose. So they were saying there was no effect if it was below 0.5 milligrams, and there was no additive effect if it was above 5 milligrams. It was most effective if you cross more than 5 time zones at a time. And so like if you're going from the US to Europe, or from Asia to the US, or you know, wherever, as long as you're crossing those 5 time zones, melatonin may be very helpful for you. And yeah, so basically just melatonin is a good treatment for jet lag. So if any of you plan on taking any long plane rides, that might be something you'd want to consider. Okay, so the next one is about snoring. So somebody asked about snoring. And the first thing with snoring that you would want to do is talk to your doctor. There are certain health conditions that may result in snoring. Snoring can be a sign of a deviated septum or sleep apnea. If you go and you get it checked out and that's not the case, there's a couple of other things that you could do to try to prevent snoring. So you can sleep on your side. You can try to lose weight if that's relevant, if you're overweight. You can drink less alcohol and not close to bedtime. You can follow a consistent sleep schedule, removing any ambient noise or light from the bedroom in particular. You can try those breathe right strips, because sometimes snoring is just you're having a difficulty breathing while sleeping. So, I keep making examples of myself, but I don't know how many of you, like when you get a cold and then you snore. I've noticed that definitely with myself. Whenever I have a stuffed up nose, then I'll wake myself up snoring, which is kind of embarrassing, but it's just because you can't breathe. You're not getting the air in. And so using those breathe right strips might be helpful. Taking a hot shower before you go to bed, that kind of clears out your nasal passages. You may want to check the filters in your house just to make sure that they're not too dusty, because that could be affecting your ability to breathe correctly. And then you could also drink plenty of water. So that'll just kind of make everything flow a little better. And, as far as like with congestion. So that would definitely be something to consider. And then again, like we've talked about before with sleep, relaxation is huge with trying to get a good night's sleep. So meditation, taking a bath before bed, lighting candles, reading, anything to de-stress. It's not directly related to snoring, but it's all a part of that healthy sleep hygiene. Okay, so then the last question that I gathered from the discussion boards was about treating colds. So somebody had asked, what do you do when you have a cold and you're still trying to go about your everyday business? And so one of the main things to do is get plenty of sleep and drink plenty of fluids. You really want to help your body repair itself. And so sleep and fluids are huge as a part of that. You also want to eat as well as you possibly can. Sometimes that's hard when you're sick, but you never want to deprive yourself. I know, there's that saying, was it feed a fever, starve a cold? That is not true. You always want to eat enough to help your body heal and repair. You can also take vitamin C. That has been shown to shorten the duration of a cold. And so you can take up to 1,000 milligrams. And the only thing to think about if you are going to take a vitamin C supplement, because you could also just eat a lot of vitamin C rich foods, is that your body can only process 500 milligrams at a time. And so if you want to take 1,000 milligrams, you would just want to take one in the morning and then one at night, or just have them separated, by at least I'd say 4 hours. I don't know. But your body just can't process all of that at the same time. A lot of the vitamin C tablets that you'll get are 1,000 milligrams. So you might just want to cut it in half, because otherwise you're basically wasting it. Vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin, and so that will just be filtered out in your urine. All right, so those were all the questions that I had listed for me. Let me just double check over here. All right, and I don't see any chats or anything over there, so we'll call that one a day.